Now, I've got some more good news. We're also in World War III. Now, we don't know 100% that the Chinese Communist Party deliberately released COVID to hurt America. It's only about 99.9999999% certain right now. But we do know 100% sure they deliberately spread it to this country and have been taking advantage of it ever since. Now, there are three purposes for the COVID. First, obviously, wreck the US economy and destroy President Trump's chances of re-election. Because what was his greatest strength at the beginning of 2020, folks? The economy was doing pretty darn nicely, wasn't it? But there's a third purpose, and this is the one we should really take on board the most. See, Obama did huge damage to the US military. Massive damage to the US military. Under Obama, America was building 9 Navy ships a year, while China was building 50. Their fleet is now 5 times larger than America's. Not such a high quality, but 5 times larger. So Trump came in and saw the danger and started to build up the military, started to improve military morale, tried to get the military budget up. But you can only do that on the back of a strong economy. The COVID was a deliberate military attack on this country to destroy the United States military budget. And that is existential, folks. China does not want to compete with us economically or dominate us economically. China wants America to settle their people in. That means the people already here have no place, folks. And they've already released one biological weapon. How many more do you think they might have in storage that are a lot more lethal than COVID-19? Now, then we get hit with Black Lives Matter, which was run basically by Liberation Road, a pro-Chinese communist group that was taking instructions from the Chinese consulate in San Francisco. But this is the thing, how is this relevant to Texas? Well, it's relevant in 2 ways. The first is this. Remember when Virginia was a red state, and then it went blue, and now it's clawed it back, okay? But how did it go from red to blue? It went because Liberation Road, the pro-Chinese communist group behind Black Lives Matter, set up an organization in Virginia called the New Virginia Majority. And they wore orange t-shirts. They worked like Acorn. Many of them were ex-Acorn types. And they signed up 300,000 minority voters in Northern Virginia and worked with Terry McAuliffe, the governor of Virginia, to legalize 200,000 felons and give them the right to vote. That 500,000 voter pool is what flipped Virginia. And full credit to the Patriots who took it back this time. Full credit. But anyway, these maps, the reason they were so good is because they were using very sophisticated GIS computerized mapping. Every single precinct in Virginia was mapped out. They knew where the Iranians lived, they knew where the Puerto Ricans lived, they knew where the Sri Lankans lived, so they could send the appropriate volunteers into the appropriate households. Very sophisticated operation, very racially based. Well, those maps were generated on contract for the last 10 years by a Liberation Road communist called Steve McClure, a graduate of the George Mason University Geography Department. He's been making those maps to flip districts in the south for the last 10 years out of the Geography Department of Wuhan University, China. So Chinese computers, Chinese staff, Chinese maps have been interfering in your elections for at least a decade now. Now there's an organization in this state called the Texas Organizing Project. This is part of their network, folks. They have the new Georgia project in Georgia, which almost elected Stacey Abrams. They have Lucha in Arizona, which is why Arizona's got 2 Democratic senators. They have Kentuckians for the Commonwealth in Kentucky, which is why Kentucky has a Democrat governor. They have the Carolina Federation in North Carolina. That's why North Carolina has a Democratic governor. And they almost got Florida through their communist friend Andrew Gillum a couple of years ago. And thankfully, Donald Trump picked the non-rhino Republican in the race, Mr. Ron DeSantis. And he prevailed. Look, I've got to say, I love Ron DeSantis like a chocolate, okay? He's great. But I've got to reveal a little bit of relation, just in full disclosure, okay? Because see, Ron DeSantis' family comes from Philadelphia. My wife's family comes from Philadelphia. And about 40 years ago, my wife's aunt used to date Ron DeSantis' uncle. So we're practically family. Just so you know. Wouldn't want to leave anything on the table there. But Ron DeSantis is an example of a governor who will take it to the enemy, who will fight for the people. This is why people are flooding into Florida right now, and Democrats are coming into Florida and changing to Republicans. It's very gratifying. But anyway, they almost, they had new Florida majority in that state. But the Texas Organizing Project, it used to be Texas Acorn. It's run by a couple of Maoists, Michelle Tremillo and I've just forgotten, Crystal Zermenyo, both Maoists from Stanford University. The founder of it, Jenny Goldman, was the former leader of Texas Acorn. It has also got a man on the board called Bernard Houston, who's the head, Bernard Sampson, who's the head of the Communist Party in Houston. They've got Reverend, I've forgotten his name now, a reverend, an actual church reverend, who's on the board as well, who's a full-on Communist Party member too. And so what they have done is exactly what they have done in Virginia and North Carolina. They are working heavily, signing up people in the minority communities of Bexar County, Harris County, and the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So they're doing massive voter registration drives on the ground amongst the Black, Latino, Asian communities, young college students, etc. This is Acorn Tactics, very well funded by the Soros operation, by Battleground Texas, by these other groups. Because why are they so? Because what they're doing is taking over these municipal areas. They elected the mayor of Houston. They elected the mayor of San Antonio. They just put 2 bona fide Marxists onto the San Antonio City Council. They elected Penny Shore, a bona fide Communist Party member, to the Texas State Legislature. They're behind Sylvia Garcia. They're behind Colin, what's his name around here? Colin Allred. They elected him. They helped to elect Mark Vasey. They are working hard amongst the minority communities, and they are basically allied to pro-Chinese communists. Because think about this, folks. Texas has 38 electoral college votes, second only to California, and the left already has California. The left has California, the Republicans have Texas, and they fight over everything else in the middle. So what happens if the left gets Texas? Where do you go then, folks? They are putting millions of dollars into the state to flip this state. They have pro-Chinese communist operations in every one of your major centres. They work in the Latino communities, the illegal immigrant communities, the black communities. They are working the minorities in those big centres to take this state. And they're only a couple of election cycles away from doing it. Couple of election cycles. And they are also the reason why that certified imbecile, Beto O'Rourke, came within 3 points of taking out Ted Cruz in 2018. That race shouldn't have been anywhere near close, should it? And now Beto's running for governor. You imagine the Hollywood money that's going to come behind him. What I'm trying to get at, folks, is this. The Chinese are working in your elections. They are working in your communities right here, in this area, through Texas Organizing Project, Jolt, Battleground Texas, and they will flip the state if you don't do something about it, if you take it lightly. And once they've flipped it, you will never get it back. They will make sure you never get it back, because they will legalize 10, 20, 30 million illegals coming across the border, and a whole bunch of them will be right here in Texas. And just by the way, if you think it's bad on the border now, Liberation Road, the same pro-Chinese communist group, is working with the political party of AMLO, the president of Mexico, to keep the borders open. They see the border, Mexico, as the key to the American Revolution. Because this is the plan, folks. AMLO was a former member of the Mexican Communist Party. He then went into the mainstream politics. He became part of the Sao Paulo Forum, which was set up by Fidel Castro and Lula of Brazil to spread communism through Latin America. He's a big-time communist, and this is what I've been told he's going to do. Now, when Venezuela was the richest country in Latin America, right? Now you can't buy toilet paper there. And of 30 million Venezuelans, 6 million have left the country, 20% of the population. Well, Mexico has 130 million people. And I'm told that AMLO is now going full on Venezuela in Mexico. He is going to go full on socialist in Mexico, an economy that's already on the ropes, and he's going to sink their economy into the ground. So we're at 20% of 130 million people likely to be heading, folks. Right here. That is the plan. The plan is to use Mexico. The Chinese are working with AMLO. The pro-Chinese communists in Texas are working with the Mexican president to absolutely keep your borders open as long as they can and flood this nation with 20 to 30 million new people, new Democrats. Anybody think I'm exaggerating here, folks? This is not a temporary phenomenon if we don't do something about it. If Greg Abbott doesn't seal the border, he's thinking maybe this problem's going to go away after 2022. This problem will only go away when the border is sealed and millions of people are deported back to where they come from.